Hey, Joni here. Is the Russian economy going to collapse? I will try to briefly answer that in today's video. Russia's war in Ukraine is extremely unsustainable for Russia, and that's even more the case for its economy. Russia has actually been really good at hiding the issues its economy is facing. It has done so by classifying some of its economic data and by cherry-picking the data it publishes. There has also been a lot of propaganda trying to claim that the Russian economy is doing well. A lot of Western journalists and analysts have fallen for it over and over again. For a long time, Russian propaganda was very successful at making people in the West believe that sanctions hurt the West more than they hurt Russia. This is of course not true. Russia is begging for sanctions to be removed. They wouldn't do that if sanctions were strengthening them and weakening the West. However, they have been quite successful at getting that message through. A quite big share of the European far right and far left have been spreading this propaganda as well. It's just sad to watch. But to get back on Russia's economy, it's not hard to have a bit of economic growth if you suddenly increase your public spending. As the Bank of Finland put it, Russia's GDP growth reflects on military spending, not economic strength. In 2025, around 40% of Russian public spending will go on defense and security. That is not sustainable in the long run. In that sense, Russia's economic growth of the last few years has actually been really low. In 2024, Russia's nominal GDP was actually still lower than in 2013. Putin's geopolitical moves of the last 10 years or so have really hurt Russia's economy and ruined its potential. And low growth is actually not even Russia's biggest worry. Russia can sustain low growth for a long time. However, there are other issues it can't. Russia's biggest issue right now is the overheating of its economy. Russia's central bank has needed to keep increasing its key interest rate over and over again. Its key interest rate has gone from 7.5% in June 2023 to 21% now. 21% is really high. And the most worrying thing for Russia is that it has not stopped its inflation. Russia's economy is overheating and its central bank seems powerless. Where does this overheating come from? There are three key reasons that come to my mind. The first one is that there is an acute shortage of labor in Russia, which is only getting worse because of the war. There was actually already a shortage before the full-scale war, but it's worse now that men are sent to the front and to work in defense sector factories. Private sector companies need to overpay their workers to attract new ones but also to keep the old ones. And that leads to inflation. The second key reason that comes to my mind is the increased public spending. Russia's public spending is much higher than it was before the full-scale war, and that of course leads to inflation. The third key reason is sanctions. Do you see any other key reason that explains this overheating? If you do, write them in the comments. Overall, the situation is not good for Russia's economy, and it should only get worse in the future. The cost of the war will keep increasing over time. Every time a soldier is recruited, the cost goes up, and the same applies to injured and dead soldiers. Russia is also slowly running out of Soviet equipment. Russia is losing much more equipment than it can produce. Until now, it had been able to replace a lot of these losses with existing stocks of old Soviet equipment. Once these run out, production will need to increase, and that will have a cost. And as Russian production cannot cover up for all these losses, Russia will likely need to buy equipment from elsewhere as well. All of this will be much more costly than the restoring of old equipment that they have been doing until now. Russia's economy is doomed, but it had prepared itself for this. The good news is that the Russian economy is on the edge and that the war is not sustainable for Russia. The bad news is that Russia can still likely sustain this pace for a while, and we don't know how long. But if we want to accelerate the process for the war to end, we cannot just wait and see, like we have done. We need tougher sanctions. The G7 price cap on Russian oil is way too high. The Russian shadow fleet is still not fully sanctioned. The US recently added vessels to the list. The EU needs to do the same. Some Russian banks still have access to SWIFT, and the EU still buys a lot of LNG from Russia. Russia's economy is weak, but it could be much weaker if we want it to. There is a lot more we can do to make this war even more unsustainable for Russia. And this is something really important for Trump and European leaders to understand. If you have other ideas on how to make the Russian economy even weaker, don't hesitate to write them in the comments. Well, that was it for today's video. I hope that you liked it. If you did, please like and subscribe, and see you in the next video.